Portable TV. Come watch with me. President Biden became the third consecutive U.S. president to bomb Syria last night with a series of airstrikes targeting militia groups there, with the U.S. claiming self-defense. But it was Biden himself who actually criticized former President Trump for similar actions. RT's Rachel Blevins is joining us now to discuss. So, Rachel, what do we know so far about this attack?
Well, so far it's being reported that nearly 24 people were killed by these airstrikes, which targeted eastern Syria near the border with Iraq. And so far, the Pentagon has confirmed that the airstrikes were called for directly by President Biden. They're referring to this as a move of self-defense and saying that their goal was to target what they referred to as Iranian-backed militias. Now, we did get a statement from Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby in which he said, quote, "These strikes were authorized in response to recent attacks against American and coalition personnel in Iraq and to ongoing threats to those personnel." Now, we have yet to hear a statement from Biden himself on this or to hear what his administration plans to continue to do in this region.
So what's the international reaction been? Has there been any?
There has. The Syrian government was quick to respond and to condemn this attack. They referred to these airstrikes as cowardly, and they also warned that this is going to continue to escalate violence in this region. We also heard from Russia's foreign minister, and he noted that Russian and Syrian troops were in harm's way when it came to these airstrikes and almost didn't have time to get away from them. In a statement, Sergei Lavrov spoke out, and he said that their troops were only notified less than 5 minutes prior to this attack. He noted that no matter how much the U.S. and Russia talk about de-escalating tensions and improving their relationship, those talks become meaningless when Russia's troops are put in harm. And now, as we know in the past, both Russia and Syria have been very vocal about referring to U.S. troop presence in Syria as illegal and calling for the U.S. to leave and to end those airstrikes altogether.
Now, Rachel, there's been a lot of buzz lately, especially on social media, about what members of the new Biden administration have actually said in the past. What can you tell us about that?
There has, and it seems to be one of those cases where there is a tweet for every situation, especially this one. We're finding out now that there are a number of top Biden administration members who are very critical of the Trump administration in the past. So I want to take a look at some of those tweets here. We've got one from President Biden himself. Back in 2019, he said that no president should order a military strike without fully understanding the consequences. He added, quote, "We don't need another war in the Middle East, but Trump's actions toward Iran only make that more likely." Then in 2018, Vice President Kamala Harris openly questioned the legal rationale of the U.S. launching airstrikes in Syria and said the president needs to go through Congress instead. And finally, in 2017, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki did the same, asking what is the legal authority for airstrikes and noting that Syria is a sovereign country. So a lot of those tweets are now resurfacing on social media, and plenty of people are pointing the Biden administration to go look back at what they said before.
Yeah, hypocrisy much, but that's pretty common here in Washington. Rachel Blevins, thank you for that update.
Thank you.
All right, for reaction to the latest bombings in Syria, we will turn to former UK MP George Galloway. So, George, you've said this many times before on this show. The new boss is the same as the old boss. So what went through your mind when you heard Joe Biden ordered his first airstrikes in Syria?
Well, it was reckless, of course. As Mr. Lavrov has just said, it could well have killed Russian military personnel who are in Syria perfectly legally fighting against ISIS and Al-Qaeda and their ilk. It was cowardly because it was done in Syria and not in Iraq. They didn't do it in Iraq because they know that the people in Iraq would have no alternative but to hit back, to retaliate to their retaliation. It was illegal because, of course, collective punishment is a crime, a war crime, and plainly the 24 people that Joe Biden killed last night were not the people who fired the rockets in a totally separate country, many hundreds of miles away, to which this action is supposedly a retaliation. So it was cowardly, it was reckless, And it was also hypocritical, as Rachel just proved there, with a brief troll of the Twitter lines of Biden and his administration. But the most important thing is, will it do any good? And who could possibly believe that it would do any good? Who could possibly believe it will not beget still more violence? Violence against Americans who were supposedly going to be drawn down and removed from the region by Donald Trump. Although he never achieved it, he was determined to do it. So I'm afraid that Joe Biden has out-hawked Donald Trump, imagine.
Now, George, the DOD, though, says this was in response to the rocket attacks launched at American targets, as you mentioned, in Iraq. The DOD has called this proportionate and defensive. However, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights that are based in London said this killed at least 22 pro-Iranian fighters. So is this proportionate or just in any way?
Well, it's vastly disproportionate and it is killing an entirely different group of people to the people you accuse of having attacked you. What's the possible legal justification for that? This is collective punishment, illegal since the end of the Second World War and the Nuremberg tribunals, after which the people responsible for these kind of crimes were hanged by British and American judges. So as justifications go, it's just about as threadbare as you can possibly imagine. If they had attacked a group in Iraq that they alleged had carried out these rocket attacks on American targets, that would have been something they could at least mount a case for. But to go to a different country and slaughter entirely different people is illegal, immoral, utterly reckless, and we're very lucky that it didn't kill any Russians by accident.
Yeah, absolutely, George. Real briefly, what about the JCPOA? Where does this put that relationship?
Well, I said to you before, I don't believe that America is going to re-enter the JCPOA. None of the actions of President Biden and his Secretary of State indicate that they will be joining it. And that will come as a huge disappointment to people all over the world who had their high hopes that it would be so. And it will, of course, accelerate Iran's progress towards being able to build a nuclear weapon. How sensible is that policy? You leave the JCPOA for one set of reasons, and the ineluctable consequence of leaving is that you bring about the very situation you say you were concerned about in the first place.
And George, before I'm out of time, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the conversation we had yesterday regarding your late friend Jamal Khashoggi. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, DNI, this report has been released confirming, at least from American intelligence, assessing that Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince MBS approved himself the killing and capture of Jamal Khashoggi. He's directly implicated here. Now we have it in writing. What's your thought?
It's utterly damning. The people who carried out the murder and dismemberment were his right-hand men. They're pictured with him thousands of times on all of his public engagements. They flew there in a private jet owned by MBS. It always was inconceivable that he was not guilty of this crime. And now that the CIA have joined the Turkish government in unequivocally laying the responsibility at his door, the question is now, what is President Biden going to do about it? And I hope that he will take the most severe measures against the ruling class in Saudi Arabia who have been guilty of many crimes, not just the one against Jamal Khashoggi. Absolutely,
George. Anybody that could conceivably imagine it wasn't related to MBS, I hope you've still retained your connections to that bridge salesman in London.
Quite.
Absolutely. George Galloway, thank you so much for weighing in.